This is Around the League from UGAsports.com. I am Dayne Young, along with the head coach, Jim Donnan, and Brent Rollins from Pro Football Focus. This is the show where we talk about the SEC and the weekend that is to come in the conference with college football. This is brought to you by Lane's Barbecue, the sauces and rubs. They make it right here in Bethlehem, Georgia. Georgia-made products. It's going to make your tailgate better than everyone else's, and you can get 15% off right now by entering the promo code GODOGS. That's GODAWGS. That's Lane's Barbecue. I've been telling you about their Spellbound. I've been using it on my chicken at home, and I promise you're going to want it as well. We'll tell you more about Lane's a little bit later in the show. We're also presented by Connor Grading and Landscaping, based in Monroe, Georgia. If you want to see some of the best front yards and landscaping done in the area in Northeast Georgia, go check out their Facebook page. That's Connor Grading and Landscaping. And that's approved by Brent Rollins himself because his yard was set up by them. We'll have him tell you more about that also later in the show. Guys, I want to get straight into what we saw from week one in the SEC. And Coach, most impressive team, most impressive player.
Yeah, I got to go with a tie here because you got the number one and number two teams in the country. Roll Tide and Go Dogs. I mean, just a very great football game by both of these two teams. Alabama certainly had a little bit more offense, no question about that. But those two teams just really stuck out around the country with their dominance. And then as far as the player, I'd have to go with just the fact that Bo Nix has had so much stuff said about him, and he had his chance to play against a team that wasn't very good, but still impressive stats, great opener for him, and maybe he's going to have a big year. So you can pick a lot of guys around the league, and I'm sure Brent will pick some of them because they had some impressive stats. But just because the monkey's on his back and everybody's waiting for him to do something, he came out and had a very impressive opener.
Brent, who caught your eye?
Outside of what Coach was talking about, because those two, Bama and Georgia established themselves as the top two teams in the country moving forward. But outside of that was Kentucky for me. Coach talked about the team; they were 13 months pregnant, and they finally looked. Now, granted, ULM they have their own issues and coming off a winless season, but still, Kentucky looked the part of an actual offense. It truly did look very Sean McVay, Rams offense-esque. And the connection between Will Levis and Wan'Dale Robinson already hitting big. And I think that they have a lot of excitement now, especially looking forward to this game, week 2 of SEC opener for them.
How about most impressive player for you?
It's the combo of Levis and Wan'Dale Robinson to me. And Coach talked about Bo Nix. Bo Nix was 20 of 22 and had a drop. So, it was almost perfect on the day. But that, and then maybe the only other things I would say would be A&M's running back combination that we talked about last week. Isaiah Spiller and Devin Achane had about 240 yards and a couple of touchdowns combined. So those guys setting the tone for their season early on.
I have to echo the Alabama and Georgia sentiments. There's no other way to go in the conference. I will say Kentucky did catch my eye because of its offense. Tennessee also caught my eye just by the way that Heupel was playing quickly. And I think that helped the Volunteers offense, mostly in the first quarter. It didn't sustain. I don't expect it to during the season as a whole. But they found a little magic in game one, and that game was never really in doubt, I would say. And that was the first game under him. You just never know how that's going to flow. And in terms of most impressive player, I have to go right back to Georgia, and we talk about it a lot, but it's Jordan Davis and everything that's built around him on that defensive line. I know it's a unit, but there's not a guy in the country like Jordan Davis. And I think Tony Elliott said it. I've never seen a guy, Clemson's offensive coordinator, I've never seen a guy as big as Jordan Davis. I'm pretty sure he said that after the game. And Coach, you've been beside him in person. I think we all have at some point. You really can't describe how big that guy is.
Yeah, he just massive, and he's really got quick feet. And certainly we chronicle the Georgia success on our other podcasts, but a lot of great players in this league. I mean, we defensive players playing for Alabama now, just the way they swarm the ball as a unit. And I'm sure Brandon's got their grades and everything, but just a consummate unit of pass rush, underneath coverage, deep coverage, rush, playing the run. Their defense is very similar to ours with probably a little bit better secondary. I don't know if their front's is good, but they ain't a tough loss losing the linebacker here, so that's going to hurt them.
I want to talk about least impressive teams. I'm going to go to you, Brent, but I'm going to make a caveat here. I don't think we can pick Vanderbilt. Obviously, that's disappointing to lose in the fashion they did to ETSU. So I think we would all say that that's the least impressive performance in the league. So I'm going to make you pick someone else besides Vandy.
I think it's Florida. When you look at, you had the hype around Emory Jones, some of it from PFF a little bit, but he struggled. And 3 turnover-worthy plays, no big-time throws. Great in the running game, both him and the backup Anthony Richardson. Great in the running game, explosive in the running game, but just off and not what you would think to see from a team that coming into that game and what they should do. So it's Florida for me.
Yeah, for me, it's Arkansas, just because they played so poorly in the first half when you thought they would really have a build-up there, and their defense kept them in the game, and then offensively got it going a little bit better there. But they're going to need a lot better performance this week. I was really disappointed in the way they played, but at the same time, it's the first game. They certainly got a good-looking team, but you would expect them to get after Rice. And the other thing we don't want to negate a little bit is, Ole Miss's performance was outstanding. Just the fact their defense got off the field so many times was something that everybody, I know you told us about it, but you're going against Louisville basketball team, I think. I don't think that was a football team. I mean, I was really disappointed in Louisville. And the other thing that disappointed me too, Mississippi State with all the turnovers. I mean, it's hard to win with 6 turnovers, but they had a fabulous fourth quarter. So, it's hard to chronicle everything and be fair to people, but without question, Florida disappointed me too. And I hope they continue to disappoint me from Georgia's standpoint.
I think I was most disappointed with LSU, but not necessarily surprised. I mean, there's some catastrophic offensive line issues down on the Bayou. And look, that's a tough circumstance with being displaced because of the hurricane a week before the game. But at the same time, LSU's got work to do. Otherwise, this is a coaching staff that may find itself on the hot seat, which, they won the national title 2 years ago and had one of the most impressive seasons in the history of the league. And it's just gone south since then. And I think last year got largely a pass because of how much talent left. But this year, there's a long way to go, and they did not get off to a good start.
No.
Let's move on to talking about Lane's Barbecue, and then we'll get into our games of the week here in SEC for week 2. I want to read you a review. This was unprompted, so this is straight up from Ned Racing Dog over at UGAsports.com. Said, I've gotten some Lane's signature rub a while back thanks to a recommendation on the chat. It became my favorite rub for the pork butts and other stuff. With Roddy's promotional skills, he decided to try Lane's Barbecue Spellbound. That's what I've been telling you about. That's this one right here. Spellbound, he said, it's perfect because it has just a little bit of sugar to get things caramelized. It's one of the best rubs I've ever experienced it. And I ordered 2 large containers of it, one for me, one for my brother. The people at Lane's Barbecue sent him a handwritten note appreciating his business. So why not support these kinds of folks from Bethlehem, Georgia? Again, that's from Ned Racing Dog over at the vent at UGAsports.com. That's the kind of people they are at Lane's Barbecue. They care about what they're doing. They care about Georgia fans, and they care about people in the state of Georgia. So that's why you should support them. Coach, I saw it at your house. I saw you've been cooking up some stuff.
Yeah, I mean, just the fact that I cook something makes you understand that I got to be real careful what I put on it, because I'm not real good at any of that. But I'm trying to learn. Biggest room in the world, room for improvement. And certainly having these, my man Brent brought me a whole contingency of different rubs and sauces and everything. And I'm going to branch out a little bit more and do the rubs. I'm using the sauce a little bit more than the rubs, but I can tell you, even though I'm not a veteran cook, I can tell the difference between something good and something that's not. And fortunately for me, we've got them sponsoring us, and I'm getting a chance to use them.
And Brent, that thing about the handwritten note doesn't surprise me at all, because you've met the Lane's Barbecue people just like I have. That's just who they are.
Yep, it is. And then when we got the sponsorship, they brought the stuff directly to my house. Obviously I don't live too far from where they are, but brought it directly to me, brought all the stuff, and then, hey, I distribute it and let you guys use it. And I've even got my brother-in-law in West Virginia is hooked on it and uses it constantly. I'm probably going to share some pictures today on Twitter, just of some of the stuff that he's doing, because he's way more into the cooking stuff than I am. But they use it religiously and love it.
What I love about them too, go check out their Instagram feed. It'll give you ideas for your grill, your smoker, if you're cooking inside, best ways to use their sauces and rubs. That's Lane's Barbecue. Again, go to their website, 15% off with the promo code GODAWGS, GODAWGS. All right, guys, let's talk about the games in the SEC. As always, we'll go in chronological order. We'll go through these pretty quickly because, frankly, it's not a very impressive slate. It starts with the Auburn Tigers, a noon Eastern, 11 Central kick that's on the SEC Network. Alabama State at Auburn. Coach, you liked what you saw from Bo Nix and Mike Bobo in week one?
Yeah, I did. And I think the people going to the game just got to be prepared for the Alabama State band. It's a great band, and they'll play whether they score or not. They'll play the whole time. And I did a game with Alabama State and UAB a few years ago, and I was really impressed with that band. Football team wasn't that good, and the same problem here. But you'll enjoy that band, I can tell you that. So that would be the highlight of the day for me, just to watch Alabama State get after it, and they got some real juice up there, the way they can move the whole game. But hey, I don't know why they're playing this game, but there's a lot of them you don't know why. But certainly after this game, Auburn will probably lead the nation in rushing and passing. They're close to it anyhow, and they're going to have some really good stats here early until they play Penn State next week.
And that's the big one next week. You got, and it's perfect actually for Brian Harsin, as a new coach. Two games that, for the most part, that warm-up type style games. Like Auburn's defense had 43. We thought Georgia's defense pressured Clemson a ton. Auburn's defense had twice as many quarterback pressures and almost twice as many sacks against Akron compared to what Georgia did to Clemson. But the Auburn's kind of interesting right now. They go up to Penn State next week. They go up there and get a dub, and they are feeling really good about themselves coming home and could possibly look at where there might be 5-0 and hosting Georgia. So that would be interesting to see how their schedule sets up. But obviously they're going to take care of business today.
I look forward to Auburn's first game of the season next week against Penn State. That's the way I'm looking at it with the way they're scheduled.
That's a great way to look at it.
Also at noon Eastern, this is South Carolina at East Carolina. Coach, I saw that the Gamecocks are only a 3-point favorite. I was surprised they were going on the road. This must be one of those 2-for-1s.
Yeah, there's some variance in that. Some people have East Carolina favored. It's just I don't know if it's somebody's hurt for South Carolina. They certainly had a lot of issues at quarterback from the injury standpoint, but Zeb Nolan came in there and got 4 TDs. I don't know that he ever threw for 4 TDs in a game at Oconee because they don't throw that much. But I'm happy for Zeb, though. He's had an up and down career moving around, and that's great. But South Carolina, to me, got a good defensive front, but they're going to go against a team that can throw the ball. They look good against Appalachian, except for some self-destruction. And this is going to be a nip and tuck game for them. And they got to be careful about looking ahead to Georgia. I think on the road at East Carolina, that's a tough place to play. My first college game as a head coach, the freshman coach for the NC State Wolfpack, we played in Greenville, North Carolina against that team. And I never will forget, we won the game very easily. But in the first half, I went for it on 4th down on their 47-yard line. And my head coach, the first thing I said after we won 69 to something, he said, "Why did you go for that?" I mean, he knew me. He's a guy that really was, he was on me about things. But that's something I'll never forget, my first game. And I did a good job, and I thought the coach was going to pat me on the back. But he said, "Why'd you go?" I said, "Coach, because I felt like we could make it. We kicked their ass."
I think you made the right call, Coach.
Yeah.
It worked out for you, that's for sure.
This is very much a dangerous game for South Carolina, though. And when you think about, but by the way, second highest margin of victory in the SEC last week was the Gamecocks. But Zeb Nolan, he had 4 touchdown passes, but he only had a 50.2 passing grade. So and it wasn't like it was efficient from the running game. Marshawn Lloyd finally got to play, the big-time recruit that they had last year that hurt his knee. And they also had Zaquandre White that had a big game for them that was a former Florida State big-time recruit at running back, played a little bit of linebacker for Florida State, goes to JUCO, and then eventually ends up in South Carolina and has himself a great game in the opener. But, Coach, highest-graded defender for South Carolina, Jordan Birch, former 5-star big-time recruiting target that was choosing between South Carolina and Georgia and actually paying dividends after a up and down, not healthy year last year.
Big time player. And the other thing look for in this game is Harris going to play, the great back last year that, came on strong and ended up being one of the leading rushers in the country, has had trouble throughout fall camp being hurt. So you put him in there with a 1-2 punch with Lloyd, and they're going to be pretty good. And we'll see how good this team is, but certainly got a lot of enthusiasm down there in Columbia around Shane Beamer and their team.
Yeah, at the top end, I think South Carolina can out-athlete East Carolina. What I'm worried about is the overall depth on the roster, and I think that's going to plague South Carolina throughout the season. The other game at noon Eastern is an interesting one at Rocky Top. Pitt goes up to Tennessee, Coach.
Yeah, the Pitt Panthers had an easy game against UMass last week. UMass continues to struggle trying to get their program back to, just any kind of competitive nature there. But that was just a wipeout. And, they got a really good forcing unit. Can they put the pressure on Milton? And, he had to scramble a lot last week. And sometimes I think he maybe started running too quick. But that's going to be the question. Can UT do a good job holding this Pitt defense? And can they offensively, can Pitt continue to put points on the board against UT? They had a lot of guys leave, and they're playing around the country. You hear these teams talk about the Tennessee transfer. Every time you cut on a TV, there's a Tennessee transfer plan. Oklahoma had a back, North Carolina back, Alabama a defensive, the 2-2, a great linebacker, just one after the other. So I think it'll be an upset if UT wins, but they are playing at home, and those fans are really getting behind the team. So I'm sure Brent's got some other ideas about it.
Well, I can't. I'm from West Virginia. I can't really say anything good about Pitt, right? And then that kind of goes with the territory. But no, this game. Well, a couple interesting things with this game. One, you had the running back Evans for Tennessee. It was the number one JUCO running back. Had a big game for them in the first game. But the quarterback, Joe Milton, the Michigan transfer, he didn't look like somebody who won the job. Like, it was a struggle for him. Now, the running game was there for him, but overall, it just felt like a struggle for them offensively. But as Coach will attest to, game 1 to game 2 is likely your biggest improvement on the season. One other fact I thought was interesting looking through that game and watching some of it is Brandon Turnage, who the Alabama transfer that was at Georgia, or said he was coming to Georgia for a second and then changed his mind, had all of 5 snaps for Tennessee on defense. So not someone who evidently was going to play much here at Georgia. But I don't know that Tennessee is enough, but Pitt's defensively, this game is a coin flip for me.
I think it's a pair of noon coin flips. It's going to get nervous both for South Carolina and Tennessee in those games. At 1 o'clock Eastern on ABC, another one of those 2-for-1s. Florida traveling to South Florida. South Florida's got a whole world of problems, but it's still strange for me to see the Gators traveling to South Florida, Coach.
That's huge for to have that game at Tampa, and certainly a lot of people there in the Tampa area are Florida Gator fans, so they'll have an easy. This will be a sellout game, and it'll be half the people there will be for Florida. But South Florida just got so far to go. I watched them against NC State, just listless on offense, didn't score a touchdown, and gave up 45 points. So this should be a game where they can really build some momentum before this Alabama game coming up. So they need to get it straight. But I was impressed with their defense. They look like they got their problems on the back end settled. They looked a lot better against the pass. So we'll see. But I think it's going to be an easy win for the Gators.
And what do you want to see? You want to see Emory Jones, who, you think about the difference between him, who had been in the system for a couple years and now getting his opportunity to start, versus Bryce Young for Alabama and the way he looked. Just the calm about Bryce Young for Alabama versus what Emory Jones looked like in the pocket. And that was, so you want to see big improvement from week 1 to week 2 for him. How much do they use both guys with Richardson and the running game at quarterback? I think that's the thing to watch in this game. But yes, like Coach said, this is going to be a bloodbath.
Yeah, a lot of pressure on Emory with the guy coming in, and there's so many people thinking right off the bat that he's not the guy. which is not fair. And then you got a new guy come in there and be so physically imposing and really show a lot of potential, then that makes it even more difficult to be the quarterback. I know Coach Mullen believes in him, and certainly you and I have discussed his physical skills. He's got it, but there comes a point where you got to do it in a game and have the confidence of your own team and your coaches. And when you got a big guy like that coming in, it makes it even tougher. So we'll see how that plays out. But I'm pulling for Emory because I think he deserves a shot based on how much he's waited his turn.
The thing that'll help the Gators quarterbacks as much as anything is which weapons will emerge to fill that void that's still left there by Pitts and Tony from previous years. I'm curious which those guys step up, and this is the kind of game against South Florida where that can really develop. And like I said, Coach, they need it against a team like Alabama coming up soon. We talked about it on UGA Sports Live on Tuesday at 3:30. On Saturday, we have UAB at Georgia. Coach, we talked about it a lot. This is a good team in UAB.
Yeah, I'll let my cohort go first here because I've talked so much about him. I don't want to use up his stuff. So go ahead and see what you got there, and then I'll fill in a little bit at the end there.
Echo Dane's sentiments. UAB is going to be the toughest game out of the next three for Georgia. They will be, to me, infinitely tougher than South Carolina and Vanderbilt. They have a very experienced team, very experienced roster. For example, their highest rated defender, he's 24 years old. It's his 7th season of college football, Tyree Turner. So you got guys who are true grown men that are on that roster.
I'm gonna call that a super duper senior.
There you go. He is a super, because he was a 5th-year senior, then a transfer, and then used the extra year. So, but you got quarterback who's Tyler Johnson, who's been good and been really good for UAB, and big guy, strong arm. I'm looking forward to this game just because it's obviously we're covering Georgia and we watch Georgia a lot, but still yet coming off that massive win. What do you look like in week 2? What do you look like on the offensive line with the Ratledge injury? Does Sawyer stay at left tackle, or does he move somewhere and you have a new left tackle? That's what I want to see. The other thing I want to see is how do they play offensively in this game? Because when you look at run pass distribution, Georgia was like right at 55% pass, 45% run in the first game. And that game just felt like a game where you're like, okay, if you're just going to dink and dunk, let's just run the ball down their throat all game. And it wasn't the case. So what do you look like now week 2? Do you still stay in that same mold? Or for me, watching it, Coach, I don't know if you have this feeling, but I have this feeling like Georgia needs to be more of a 2017 Georgia as opposed to 2021 Georgia with the group that they have right now.
You got to kind of adjust your team with your personnel, and without our receivers, it's hard to be a pass first team when you know if you can run the ball at least better than you can throw it. So run a little bit more, these, instead of calling RPOs, maybe call more predetermined runs, but that's not up to me. That's up to Coach Smart and Coach Monken. But I think when you analyze it, if Burton's ready to go, if Blaylock's come around now that Coach Smart said Blaylock has been cleared, but that doesn't mean he's game ready. But all of a sudden you get those guys, and Burton played, I think 40 some plays the other night, but 81 Rosemary St. Jack, he looked good in practice, and certainly he played a lot of snaps too. So, but overall, it's just if your receiver core is good enough to justify calling more passes, then stay with it. If not, you've got a great defense, a great kicking game, and your running game's good enough. Take what you can and win the game. And then when these other guys come back, then you know what we're going to have to do to beat some of these better teams. But, just take what you got and go with it. I said on our show yesterday, know thyself, Socrates. Hey, what can we do with what we got? So it should be a game where Georgia's going to get challenged, though. And the thing you got to remember, this team can run the ball good enough where their play action is going to be a lot better than what Clemson showed. Clemson got no running game. And, most of their passes, as Brent showed us the week before, are behind the line their runs are, quick screens and bubbles and stuff. This team right here can run the ball, power ball, and they'll challenge Georgia some, and they'll get their attention pretty quick when they come out there in the first quarter.
Don't be surprised if we wake up in December and UAB is conference champions in Conference USA. I mean, they're that quality. They've been in contention for it for many years now. They're always right there at the top, but don't be surprised if you wake up and that's the case. Also on Saturday, this is a 3:30 Eastern kick. Texas A&M against Colorado. It is in Colorado, but not in Boulder. It is a neutral site game in Denver at Mile High Stadium. Coach, A&M didn't look like it was quite as sharp as it needed to be early on in their game one.
Well, we knew that Kent State, I mean, this is a good football team. They played a lot of good teams over the last couple of years. I mean, they really are a little bit different MAC team from the standpoint of, their skilled players and things like that. So they challenged A&M, and A&M had a new quarterback. And but as Brent alluded to early on, you got backs like that, and you got a defensive front that can rush the passer. You're going to be pretty good. I think Colorado certainly got an easy win last week. Not a very difficult opponent, but Colorado to me is kind of on a downward trend. They looked so bad in the bowl game against Texas. Had some staff turnover there, in the off season. This will be a game that, to me, A&M is going to assert itself, and I look for them to really get after the Buffaloes. I think they could scald them up there in Mile High Stadium.
I would tend to agree with that. And player to watch for me with this one is Leon O'Neal Jr., defensive back for Texas A&M, who happened to actually hit me up on Twitter and say, hey, what were some of my numbers and how can I get better and things like that over the offseason. So I was like, hey, and then he went and had he was the highest graded defender in week one, had a couple interceptions. So good for him. But I look for A&M, like Coach said, to handle their business and take a very sort of efficient jump from week one to week two.
That's what's going to be needed for A&M to get where it wants to get to, and that's competing with a team like Alabama. That's going to be what the West is made of this year. Maybe Auburn's in there somewhere, but we're going to be approaching A&M and Alabama time here in just a few weeks. I want to stop and tell you about our friends at Connor Grading and Landscaping. If you're watching us on YouTube, I'm sharing a photo of some of the work that they've done around the area, and this is just such a beautiful front yard that they got set up. This is a bit of a difficult project, I would say, because it's got that slope in the front. So you have to make sure that you get the land done just the right way to be able to have the new sod placed and then have the front yard looking great and the flower beds in the front. Connor Grading and Landscaping. They're based out of Monroe, Georgia. Their phone number is 770-639-3149. Google it if you don't remember that. Connor Grading and Landscaping. You can see more photos of their work over on their Facebook page. Brent, you had the personal experiences at your home, so I always like hearing your experience with Connor Grading and Landscaping.
Great people, great work that they do, and always consistent, always very quick to respond and handle any and all issues that we have that I've had here at the house. I've had multiple projects done, from a trail to sod to any and all landscaping, everything that we had done outside the house. And they've been exemplary with the service and the work that they've done.
Coach, I know you like to keep a good looking front yard. These are the people to call if you need any work. All right.
Exactly. I had a pre-existing condition here as far as somebody I've been using, but for sure, I was able to go out there and look at, I told you on the first show, I was looking at Brent's yard, and I was getting a lot of love about the way it was looked, and he was telling me about what had happened and the service he got from his friends at Connor. And it was unbelievable, really. I mean, I was giving him too much love, and he didn't do as much as I thought he did. So he was on that mower, though. He was working hard. He was mowing his grass. So he's a typical West Virginia guy. They mow their own grass.
That's right. That's what we do, Coach.
Nick Saban does too, right?
Nick does.
I bet he does. I bet Nick. No, he doesn't. He doesn't.
Yeah,
that's not part of the process.
He could probably watch film the way he does it now. It's a new kind of thing.
If he doesn't, he's out there telling that guy how to.
Speaking of Nick Saban, the Tide host Mercer. I don't know what to say other than Mercer. You went from Point University in week one to Alabama in week two. I don't think there's a much bigger disparity in all of football.
Yeah, first of all, I want to give a shout out to one of my ex-players, Drew Cronick, who's the head coach of the Mercer Bears. Very proud of Drew and his career and his family. You know, he started out early as a coach at Furman, then he got the head job at Lenoir-Rhyne and did a really good job, got them in the playoffs, and then took over Mercer last year in a tough situation with COVID. but boy, he'll do a good job down there. But when he had the interview for the job, I don't. He was going to be playing Alabama this year, but that's really a total mismatch. And whatever money they give them for this game, they deserve it, because this is going to be, one of those things you just got to go through. And the players certainly enjoy having a chance to play in front of all the fans and all that, but it's going to be tough on the Mercer Bears.
Nothing more to say.
Future SEC matchup coming at 7:00 Eastern time. This is a 6 Central. We have Texas and Arkansas. Coach, could be a little fascinating here.
Yeah, this game means a lot to both teams, because goes back to the big, back in the Big 8 days in the Southwest Conference. Excuse me, not the Big 8. They never played in that, but Southwest Conference game. When Coach Broyles and Coach Royal playing the game of the century there for them, in 1969. Richard Nixon was at the game and all that, and it was unreal. But I think Texas really impressed me. Their running back is just outstanding. Robinson, he can really do a lot of things, and that helps their young quarterback Card, who threw for 3 touchdowns last week. They were impressive in their first game, so we'll see if Coach Odom's defense can slow them down. When you go on the road, sometimes you don't play as good, but like Brent was alluding to, hopefully Arkansas will improve from the first week to the second. But right now, I would say this would be an upset for Arkansas to win. But, they're playing at home, and, KJ, the quarterback's got to play better. There's no question about that. But he's got that kind of capabilities. But who you like in this game, Brent?
I think I like Texas just for the simple fact that, one, like you just said, KJ Jefferson struggled game one, 52.7 passing grade. And to me, you can't really discount how good of a win that was for Texas against the Raging Cajuns. They are good, and they are consistently good and well coached. And Billy Napier's always brought up as a sort of Power 5 or big time job head coach guy. So that team is always prepared and a difficult task to play against, especially because of what they do offensively. But Texas played well. Texas played very efficient, and I think they're sort of starting that climb. It'd be interesting to see what they do when they get into conference play. But Arkansas, like Coach said, does your quarterback play better week 1 to week 2? How much do you improve? Shout out Joe Fouché that we talked about last week, was their highest graded defender in week 1. Had a good game himself. But I agree. I think Texas is going to be probably just a little bit better. But it's going to be a fun game to watch and a fun game to see. Because like Dayne said, future SEC matchup.
We know Arkansas is a physical team, so I think this is probably a matchup that Steve Sarkisian will welcome for Texas, to see if back-to-back weeks, if they can kind of rise up to play a team that's going to be physical in the trenches. And if that's the case, then maybe Texas is on the way back, because that's really been, I think, one of the fatal flaws for the Longhorns in recent years.
Yeah, I was surprised with Texas defense. It's been a nemesis for them, but they as we keep talking about these different openers and people around the country that really don't know Louisiana's football team. This is a top 35 team if you go around the country in any level, there's a lot of teams that can't beat that team, and they're extremely well coached, and they do a good job with their offense. So that for them to put the squelch on them like that, Texas, I know this, some of my friends in Oklahoma who always are counting on winning that Big 12, they're a little bit more worried about Texas than they normally were. That's for sure, after watching the Longhorns last week.
Your friends in Oklahoma may be a little nervous, but your friends at NC State, I think they're pretty excited about their first game. Coach, the Wolfpack go to Mississippi State this week for an ACC-SEC matchup.
Pack might be back. Come on, 45-0. They really looked good there in Carter Finley Stadium last week, and I had a chance to watch them. Impressed with their defense. Offensively, they do some good things, and they're playing against a team that, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. The team's down 21 points in the fourth quarter and comes back and wins at home just after 6 turnovers. So we got that kind of potential with Will Rogers. He can do a lot of things, but it's hard to sustain a win when you're throwing the ball to the other team and turning it over like they did. So State's going to be in for a rude awakening listening to all those cowbells. So they haven't been around that kind of situation now. I mean, tough place to play. And, they need the fans on their side instead of being down, with I'm talking about Mississippi State. So we'll see how the Bullies do here. I got a feeling that the Leach got their attention, and I'm going to pick, as much as I hate it, I'm going to pick the Bulldogs to win that game.
I'm actually going to go the opposite way, Coach, because I had our offensive and defensive line coach, Mr. James Argo, for our youth football team, is a massive Wolfpack fan and is feeling really good about his team right now and loving the experience that they have. And he is. I am going with him this week. I think NC State goes down there and gets a victory.
Hey, I feel good about them too, but I've seen this team fold like an accordion before, so we'll have to see if they can get this one. Then they're going to be in a mix there in their division, because North Carolina looked woeful protecting the quarterback. So, but just to get over the hump here, I'm pulling for the Packers, no question about that. But I think Mississippi State's better than they showed.
I'd go with Mississippi State as well. I've seen teams all the time that they have that resilient moment where they were probably going to lose a game that they shouldn't. They come back and they find a way to win it, and they become a better team because of that. We'll see if that happens for Mike Leach and the Bulldogs. I'm limiting you guys to 7 seconds on this game because I think that's what it warrants. Austin Peay at Ole Miss. We saw what the Rebels have.
Their offense puts teams in conflict all the time. I love watching it. That's all I got.
It's going to be not only ugly, it's going to be very ugly. It's like that guy that I had, that I knew that had a prearranged marriage that from a lady in Japan. And, I asked him, I said, well, hey, what does she do? And he told me, I said, well, how does she look? He said, she's ugly. She's very ugly. So this could be a very ugly game here.
We do have an SEC matchup on the schedule this week. This is 7:30 Eastern time on SEC Network. Missouri at Kentucky. We'll see if the Wildcats continue that offense. It looked different, Coach.
Yeah, here's a game that it's kind of, really a burr in Coach Stoops' saddle. Losing to the Missouri like they did last year. Just Missouri really got after them, and Missouri got some running game to go with their passing game. And they did a good job rushing the passer against Central Michigan too. It's kind of interesting. Central Michigan's coach, I've never heard of a coach missing a game for appendectomy, but certainly I'm glad that Coach McElwain's okay. But, it hurts them without having your offensive coach, the guy that calls the plays. And certainly Coach McElwain, I hope he gets better. But this game, to me, is going to boil down to which quarterback can take care of the ball, because both teams are pretty decent on defense. And I'd like to see Kentucky continue to show that offensive firepower that we knew they might have. And Coach Rollins there did a good job of telling us what their potential was last week when he was analyzing their offense.
It was fun to see. Like, especially if you're a Kentucky fan, like, just, hey, we're actually taking play action deep shots, attacking teams down the field all over the place. Will Levis had 637 career passing yards in 2 seasons at Penn State. He had 367 last week. Now, granted, ULM was not necessarily the competition, and that's one thing that I think that's interesting for me with this game is you have two somewhat comparable teams. Kentucky is a little stronger along the offensive line, but Missouri played a very difficult opponent for that, and a tough opponent and someone that tested them in week 1. Central Michigan was good and is a good football team. Kentucky did not. And how much of that does that show up in week 2? But the interesting thing for me is Kentucky, by the way, from a numbers perspective, the highest graded overall team grade in all of week 1 from PFF. So
wow,
some of the things that they did quite efficiently, quite well, especially in the passing game. And this is just going to be a fun game to watch. I do think Kentucky pulls it out there being at home.
Important.
Yeah, you look at going into a game defensively, defending against Kentucky the last couple of years. I mean, you just work all week, stopping the run, dare them to pass. And now, and people had a hard time stopping the run without their ability to throw the football. Now you add in, as we're talking about, the play action stuff and the different kind of stuff that the Rams do that they've brought to their offense, it worries me. I mean, it worries me about any team playing them that I'm pulling for, because I think that we know they've got that lunch pail, hard-nosed defense, and they play tough, aggressive football, but you just can't win a lot of games in the SEC without a passing game. And they were still able to go to bowls and do a lot of things, but now they might beat, to me, this game right here. And Florida's got to step up too, but this is definitely to show who the third best team in the East is, maybe the second best.
Exactly what I was going to say. This is kind of a top contender kind of a matchup early in the year. Whatever happens in the games between Missouri and Florida and Kentucky, when they all play each other, whoever wins those two is going to be that top contender in the East. And I think they're all going to be competitive because they all have some offensive firepower as well.
Exactly.
One of the Orgerons is going to get a win for the first time this season as McNeese plays at LSU. It is Ed Orgeron and the Tigers losing their first game to UCLA. McNeese lost its first game to West Florida, and now it's a coach going against his son, the starting quarterback for McNeese. LSU is going to win this game. I think we all agree on that, but LSU's got some work to do, Coach.
Definitely need some transfers or need something to happen with their offensive line. I mean, felt bad for Max Johnson running for his life out there. He even had to throw one behind his back during the game. I don't think I've ever seen one like that. Fortunately, it wasn't intercepted. And then defensively, they got the new defense, but boy, they got pummeled. A very aggressive UCLA team on both sides of the ball. Looked like Chip Kelly's got it humming out there. So I'm just going to tell you, before the game, Coach O's going to go up to his son and say, "Hey, son, you got to take it easy on your papa. Said, you want that new car, don't throw any touchdown passes."
And then he's going to say, "Go Tigers," right?
Go Tigers.
Go Tigers.
He didn't say "Go Tigers." He needs to get "Go Tigers." That's for sure.
So when you look back at LSU over the past 5 or 6 seasons, outside of 3 games against Alabama where they were pummeled by Alabama, that was their lowest graded game outside of those 3 games against Alabama. So one of the worst performances that they've had over the past 5 or 6 years. And they got, they're going to get right this week. They're going to feel good about themselves this week, but they got, Auburn in a couple weeks. Life is going to get interesting for LSU very quickly. I think that's going to be an issue. That might be a combustible situation if you don't get things right and get some confidence.
We got a situation there, and that it's pretty obvious. You got Alabama, A&M's right there, and then we got some teams there that are really on the come. Mississippi, Auburn, maybe, and boy, all of a sudden LSU, you better get your ass in gear, man. Those are some good football teams. And then you got Arkansas, Mississippi State, very capable. So that whole Western Division from 3 on down is going to be a Donnybrook.
I mean, yeah, it's just relentless in the SEC West. Brent, you mentioned one of the worst games. I think we have to say that about Vanderbilt as well. That's our last game in the SEC this week. Vanderbilt goes to Colorado State, a 10 p.m. Eastern kick. So I guess that's 8 p.m. out in the mountains.
Can we just not talk about Vanderbilt ever again until they win?
This is a pillow fight of the week, though. We're talking about Colorado State. Who lost last week inexplicably, and they haven't done hardly anything under this new coach. So maybe Vandy can go out there and get in another time zone and, love the mountain air and all that. But this game right here is, we used to have this on ESPN, a pillow fight of the week, 2 teams that are just fighting for their life. And hopefully, and I'm not making, I guess that's bad to say it like that, but it is going to be 2 of the bottom feeder teams of the whole FBS. I mean, just really low teams.
Well, not to belabor the point, but like when you look at Vanderbilt losing to ETSU in the fashion that it did, where they gain as many yards but don't score points, I start to wonder how many teams in the state of Tennessee are better than Vandy, because it may be up to like 5 or 6 if that's the case.
Well, if you include Carson Newman, you got Middle Tennessee State, Carson Newman, Tennessee.
Trent Dilfer's high school team.
Yeah, that team scoring a lot of points, but the thing about East Tennessee, give Randy Sanders the credit. I mean, they only started football 4 years ago. They didn't even have a football team. So Impressive.
Very impressive. Brent, I don't think we have anything else to add on Vandy. So, guys, I'm going to make you pick your upset of the week, or at least a team that should be on upset alert from these SEC matchups. I'll give you mine first and give you a second to think about it. I'm looking at South Carolina. I think they're in trouble at East Carolina. I know I said that's almost a pick'em game, so maybe you don't say it's an upset. But look, I promise you, if in the second game of Shane Beamer's era, if it's a loss to East Carolina, that's just not going to sit well in Columbia.
Who you got?
I'll say I'm gonna go with the Wolfpack. Like I said, I think the Wolfpack beat Mississippi State.
Is Mississippi State favored?
That's a great question.
I'll look up a line on that real fast while you're talking, Coach.
Upset of the week. So I'm gonna pick the Mercer Bears. I got to go with Drew Cronick big. No, I'm going to go with you. I'm going to East Carolina just because I think East Carolina playing at home is a tough out for South Carolina, and I'm going to pick East Carolina too.
Looking up odds for Mississippi State and NC State. I'm seeing NC State favored by 2.5. So, I mean, that's close enough to tell you that depending on where
he's trying to use all this insider information from his D-line coach and all that. So we give him credit. I mean, not many people would do a show like this and go interview one of the coaches on your little league team to get some of your scoop. But
hey, that's my guy for NC State.
Brent works it hard now. I mean, I never know what his next deal is. He's got all these stats from Pro Football Focus and all these people that he knows, but when he can go to a little league D-line coach for a big pig, I like it. That's the way to go.
Coach, I don't want to know who all you called when you were coaching to try to find any information you could, because I bet that phone was ringing off the hook for people. Hey, what do you know about this team over here? Did you see this quarterback before?
Hey, well, you got plenty of ideas from people, for sure. And the only thing I know is when I got the Oklahoma job, I was staying at a Marriott right there and staying there the whole semester, like the last 3 months. And so the first day I was going to the office and I stopped by a 7-Eleven there, give me a Dr. Pepper or whatever I got. I don't drink coffee. And these two guys were over there in the corner and talking, and they said, "What do you think of that new offensive coordinator at Oklahoma?" And he said, "Well, I don't know much about him." And the other guy said, "Well, you better get his ass in gear pretty quick. We ain't gonna put up with much very long." So I'm at a 7-Eleven, man. I knew that these people talking about me before I even called one game.
Not much has changed. That is the status of college football. That's for sure. All right. This has been Around the League from UGAsports.com. It is possible because of the support of Lane's Barbecue in Bethlehem, Georgia, and Connor Grading and Landscaping out of Monroe, Georgia. Support those people. Support the people that support us to make it where we can do what we do. And we do this show for you, for Brent Rollins, and for the Hall of Fame head coach, Jim Donnan. I am Dayne Young. We'll see you next week here on Around the League.